Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Hybrid Healing Hour. Today we have a returning guest with us, Susan Greeley. Welcome back to our show.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here again.
And even though you've been on before, would you please introduce yourself to our audience and tell them a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are? And then I want to dive right into one of the topics I've been dying to talk about, which is the truth about seed oils and the fats that we need.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, both Deanna and Brian, for having me back. I always love being on your podcast. And so my name again is Susan Greeley, and I am the National Director of Wellness Services and Senior Vice President at Castle Connolly Private Health Partners. I run the Send Solution Wellness Program and a team of health coaches where we focus on sleep, exercise, nutrition, and stress management. But my background is that I am a registered dietitian nutritionist of more than 30 years at this point. And I just have, still a lot of passion about educating people on nutrition and health.
Awesome. And you have a little cooking background, correct?
Oh, I do. I love to cook. So I am a cookbook author as well. And I have been teaching at the Institute of Culinary Education. And so I cook a lot. I cook daily I have 4 children. It's very important to me to cook healthy meals at home and practice what I preach.
And one of the first podcasts I ever heard about seed oils was your podcast that you had done.
Oh, thank you. With Udo Erasmus, and I can talk a lot about that. So I do have the Sense of Wellness podcast through Castle Connolly, and one of the guests that I had and would love to send listeners to is also the episode on Fats That Heal, Fats That Kill. That's the name of the book by Udo Erasmus. So we can start with
Go ahead.
Maybe with that.
Let's just dive in. I mean, there's so much to talk about. There's so much overlap in this topic, I feel. I mean, we're going to kind of have to stay on track, I guess, so hard.
I know. There's a lot to cover.
And there's so many myths. You know, there's so many things that we were taught in medical school and you were taught in PA school that are so wrong. Yeah. And so hopefully we're now coming to the point where we're going to figure out what's really good for us and what's not good for us. And
I kind of want to back up a little bit. I mean, I wasn't even taught nutrition or diet,
limited in medical school.
Yeah. And so I learned everything on my own. And, you take what you were brought up with as a child, thinking you're eating what your parents thought was best, right? And then you're learning all the things, maybe I should not have had that in my diet, and that's where I think everybody needs to be an advocate for themselves and do their own research. And that's why, we have this podcast is to educate. And we want everyone, you can even take the information we give you today and do your own research.
And there's one thing I want to say about that, about this topic in particular, because it's such an important topic. Lately medicine has become like the enemy of the month club, right? Every month we come out with something new that we hate. 1 month is gluten, 1 month is sugar, and it keeps going like this.
Coffee gets thrown in there, which makes me very sad.
And we're doing a coffee podcast episode.
But this truly is a problem, and this is something that you may not have heard of before, but you want to expand?
I would love to. At this point, I believe literally the entire population has heard the term seed oils. And so I want to talk about what they actually are and the fact that you just mentioned too that fats are oversimplified from the medical standpoint. And these messages have been given to the population, to the general public over many years that cholesterol is bad, saturated fat is bad, and that is not the whole story. And it's really important to set the record straight. And so that's why we're here. So as far as seed oils, so these are these highly refined, commercially produced oils that don't exist normally in our diets. They are completely manufactured product. Some of these seed oils, so they are derivatives of various plants, and we wouldn't be consuming them otherwise. And things like cottonseed oil. Since when do humans need to consume cottonseed oil? We don't. And there's a whole list of them. But in any case, the most important thing is to understand that it's the processing of these oils that is really what makes them bad. And they're in all of these ultra-processed foods right now. About 60% of Americans' daily calories come from ultra-processed foods. So that's the broader category. And that doesn't mean that the fat in those ultra-processed foods is the worst thing. There are other parts of it, including high fructose corn syrup. We can talk, a lot of preservatives and various things, and just highly refined other grains and those. So I digress. But so we have our ultra processed foods, and within that, because we're consuming so many calories daily from ultra processed foods, we're also consuming 30% of our calories daily from these seed oils. Now that to me is terrifying.
Well, absolutely. and you touched on, cottonseed oil, but I want to go ahead and list off a few of the others that people, because I have had some patients ask me well, what is a seed oil? Well, okay, let's give an example. Yeah. Soybean oil. That's a huge one that you might see. If you read any of your labels of the listed ingredients in any of the packaged foods you eat, soybean is in probably most of them.
If I'm not mistaken, vegetable oil is also soybean oil, right?
That can be a combination.
It can be.
It's safflower, sunflower, corn, soybean. So it's not just the
vegetable
soybean.
oil is a vague term to cover them,
have
right?
A blend, exactly.
Right,
and make it sound healthier.
Well, they do, exactly. Right. And just like people think corn oil, right? They think that's healthy because, it's a vegetable. And that is exactly how we've been fooled, I say. Right. But let's go. I want to continue listing. So we've got soybean, corn, canola, cottonseed, rapeseed, grapeseed, sunflower, safflower, rice bran, sesame, and peanut. And these are a lot of different seed oils. So you may have seen these listed. I mean, how many people have canola oil sitting in their cupboard or their pantry, right now?
People for cooking.
Right. And you make canola oil is in almost every dessert recipe or salad dressing. And that's what people don't realize, that, like you said, 30% of our calories are ingested from these oils.
These highly refined.
Highly refined. I mean, talking about the process of that. So these are seeds that nobody was going to ingest these, but what they did is they're
waste products.
They're waste products, exactly. And they said, okay, well, let's take this waste product, let's burn the crap out of it, right? So they heat it up, and so it's oxidized, and then they have to take it and deodorize it because it smells so rancid after they heat the crap out of this. There's no nutrients whatsoever, and then they deodorize it because nobody would be able to take the smell of them otherwise. And that is then how they can make
it shelf stable. It has a consistent odor.
It's clear
color.
Looking.
Right.
Exactly.
So
color. And let's not talk about how most of those are in plastic bottles. Anyway.
No, that's important to mention. That is mostly
right. They're clear plastic bottles.
Exactly.
Right.
So please, stop buying them, stop using them in the home. And I think it's really important to talk about what we do in our home, and then we can talk about what we do when we're out. I think there's a huge element of ignorance is bliss when we eat out, and that's okay. If Americans get to the point where it's more above at least 50% of their daily meals are consumed at home or, from foods prepared at home, that would be better. I don't know the stat on how much Americans eat out, but it's a lot.
It's probably more than it should be. I mean, I think of people all the time, they're running with their kid to soccer practice or to,
I do the same.
Exactly. But you know what? Stopping at Chick-fil-A and getting French fries with your fried chicken sandwich,
that was not a fried chicken
or
sandwich.
Even not.
They're still consuming significant seed oils and other.
But people don't realize they're taking the already processed oils, right? And then they're now in a deep fryer. They're being fried again and repeatedly oxidized over.
And it's the same oil
over.
that's being heated over and over.
So I want to mention the fact that Americans and probably everybody globally, we as consumers are told not to use olive oil. I get this question a lot. Oh, I shouldn't use olive oil in cooking at home, and they don't even necessarily understand why. But they're not consuming enough olive oil in their diets. And instead, they're consuming these oils, to your point, they've already been heated to extremely high temperatures. They're bleached, they're deodorized, right? And every bit about that refining process is creating an unhealthy, unnatural oil. So we need to, I'd love to take a step back and actually describe fats and oils in general from a nutrition standpoint.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and basic nutrition, we do need essential fatty acids, and there are 2 essential fatty acids in the diet. They come only from oils, omega-3s and omega-6, so we'll get to that. But every fat and oil out there, whether it's solid or liquid at room temperature, has some proportion of unsaturated and saturated fatty acids in it. And the body needs them. We do need fats as a general macronutrient category, and they need to be really healthy fats because they are so essential for proper functioning of humans, for our brains, for our hearts, every cell in our body. So that said, we have monounsaturated fat and we have polyunsaturated fat in the unsaturated. And then you have saturated fats that have also been extremely oversimplified and misunderstood along the way. And we've definitely thrown every baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
It's just gotten very confusing for consumers to understand. So whether it's butter or it's olive oil, there's some amount of mono, poly, and then unsaturated fat and saturated fats. And even canola oil. So that's not necessarily an unhealthy oil, to be honest. If it were produced the right way, maybe in a cold pressing organic, then that's actually a very healthy oil to use. Why? Because it has a higher proportion of omega-3 fats than some of the other oils. And same with soybean. The ones that are high in the omega-6 fatty acids are things like cottonseed, sunflower, safflower, and corn, of course. But the main thing there is that we just have this disproportionate consumption of the omega-6 polyunsaturated fats. And that is also a big part of the story and a big part of the problem. It's not that omega-6s are unhealthy and causing cancer and causing heart disease. They're not. It's that they're displacing the other healthy fatty acids in our diet. And we do need most of those from the fats and oils to be the monounsaturated oleic acid. So that's oleic acid. What's so great about it? It's naturally high in antioxidants. It's high in polyphenols, these plant sterols that we know actually lower LDL, that bad cholesterol. Mm-hmm. So we do need to include more of those. And I tell people all the time, include avocado oil and olive oil in your diets. When you're eating at home, it's easy to use, good versions of those, meaning like the cold pressed and the organic. They're expensive. Yes, they're expensive. But right now, we spend so much money eating out on healthy foods. Right?
And that's actually like olive oil should technically be the cold pressed and organic.
Yes. And so what does that mean?
They're not getting heated up and they're not processed. They're not getting so heated to be processed and oxidized before you even consume them.
To keep it really simple, I've been telling clients during weight management classes and some of the classes I've done over the course of many years as a dietitian that if you think about fruits, which would be olives and coconut and avocado. Those are actually 3 fruits. Extracting the oils from those are very easy. And so that's why it makes it a less refined oil. Mm-hmm. Okay, so focus on those. I think those are actually good to focus on. Coconut oil is a little confusing. I don't want to say by any means replace your other healthy oils with those saturated fats because coconut oil is a highly saturated fat. And I know you want to bring up things like ghee and beef tallow and even lard. So those are naturally much higher in saturated fat than, say, the olive oil and the avocado oils that have a very high proportion of monounsaturated fat. You can use a mix of these, and there's a place for them. And when you want to fry something, then it is better to use a more stable fat, which would be a highly saturated fat.
And when you say stable, this is something that can handle a higher smoke point, correct?
But also at room temperature, it's less susceptible to oxidation by light, air. So the second any of those healthy oils, let's take flaxseed oil. I like to talk about this one in particular because it's very high in omega-3 fatty acids, which we know we need. And back to those essential fats, flax oil is the highest in the essential fatty acid, meaning we need to consume it in our diet because we don't make it. So that is called alpha-linolenic acid, ALA, that gets converted to EPA and gets converted to DHA. And a lot of people just go and eat fish and consume fish oil.
And which is great. Or they take ALA pills.
And you can take that but most of them are the EPA and DHA, and we really do need all 3 of those, and the only sources in the diet are plants. And that's why flax and soybean are very good sources. So if you eat edamame, I'm a huge proponent of good, healthy soy.
Right.
So back to our flaxseed oil. It is extremely volatile. That means it degrades quickly, it oxidizes quickly when exposed to any amount of air, light, and heat.
So that means it could become rancid quickly.
Very quickly. And then it is not good for us. So we need to take care of it and treat it the way it's meant to be treated. Only buy flaxseed oil in a very dark bottle. And same with olive oils. Those dark green glass bottles are the healthiest way to buy it, not the plastics.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And something like a flaxseed oil needs to be stored in the refrigerator, and you never heat it. You don't cook with it, but you can drizzle it, combine it in maybe with an olive oil, and create a great salad dressing with it, or some dips. They're endless. If we talked about food and recipes, we could go on for a very long time. I love to bring this up, and I know I've maybe mentioned it to you in the past when my kids were little. I mentioned this on my podcast with Udo, because I was living in Germany and I was preparing all my own baby foods. A lot of my poor son turned orange, I believe, because I gave him so many sweet potatoes and carrots. But I would put a teaspoon of fresh flaxseed oil on it to help with the absorption of the fat-soluble vitamins, vitamin A in particular, and then also to help him get those omega-3 fats naturally. And for the baby's brain, fats are really critical throughout that growth in early life, but fats are essential for all of us throughout life. Yeah. I hope I'm talking a lot, and back to that, the composition of every fat, right? They have the varying proportions, and so really importantly about the omega-3s and omega-6s, the body needs the omega-6s. It's just that we have in the American diet, I think the estimate is that we get about a 20-to-1 ratio omega-6 to omega-3, whereas in a normal situation for humans, it would be about 2-to-1, maybe 4-to-1, at the most 6-to-1. I believe in Europe they consume about a 6-to-1 ratio of omega-6 to omega-3s. Don't quote me on that. That's what I read a few years ago. In any case, that's a little more balanced. And in the U.S., because of this consumption, back to our throwing the seed oils under the bus, which they need to be, because there's no place for them in our diet, honestly. It's just completely skewed that. And then because of the processing of those otherwise would-be healthy oils, even though some of them are not for human consumption, period, but take corn. We eat corn. And I get this question too, is corn then bad for us? No, right? And soybeans are not bad for us. I personally choose to eat only organic soy products if I'm choosing tofu or edamame, and I do eat that, and that's a great source of omega-3, believe it or not.
And you're eating the true source of soy, though.
Yes.
That's the thing that people don't understand when you're eating anything that's packaged. I mean, you might be eating like a granola bar you think is healthy, right? And it's got soybean oil, corn flour, or corn
and soybean
and safflower oil. It's got a blend, right?
Anytime it says that oil, it's one of these
ultra processed. Exactly. And that's what I want people to understand is the oil that is the dangerous part. So that's why we're
it's the
also
processing.
Exactly.
The processing of the oil.
Exactly. And we know that I read a statistics that the average American eats 3 to 5 tablespoons of seed oils per day.
I just cringed.
Right. You don't imagine. Now, I actually have a recommendation like that, we did an Ayurveda medicine actual podcast recently, and going back to ancient years, like there's recommendations to get like even a tablespoon or two teaspoons of olive oil or avocado oil a day, which most people don't unless you're intentionally drizzling that on your food. So in order for us to get 3 to 5 tablespoons of bad oils, and you're not intentionally going out and eating it or drinking it, but it's coming in the potato chips you're eating, the granola bar, breads.
Dressings.
People don't understand the crap that is in bread, and it drives me nuts. I'm like, read your labels.
There's oil in bread.
Tons of oils in bread. So, there's certain breads that are out there that are okay. And salad dressings are terrible. If you even look at the back of like a Hidden Valley Ranch dressing, salad dressing, it's the first, I think it's like the first ingredient was canola oil.
Yeah. Don't mind me saying, ask any of my clients if you're out there and you did any of my cooking classes or weight management classes. I would get this question often. What's the best salad dressing, Susan? I'm like, I make my own.
Me too. And so something so simple. I love going to these little olive oil shops.
They're fabulous.
I love them.
Corner.
I wish there was one in our area. There used to be, and it's not here anymore. But you can get them online from these little stores. I know, like I've been to one in Texas. I've been to one upstate in Florida, and you can buy they season them olive oil, and then you can get seasoned vinegars. And I literally just put a little vinegar and olive oil. Or flavored, you could get, sorry, not seasoned, but flavored.
I know.
And,
infused,
right, infused. And you can blend it yourself and then pour that on your dressing or on your salad. It's so delicious.
It makes it tasty. It makes it really...
And refreshing.
Yes,
and it's not creamy.
And the way salad's meant to be eaten. And I say, don't forgo that healthy fat. We do need it. And using those finishing oils, drizzling a very good high-quality olive oil on your food before you eat it is a really healthy thing to do. And a shout out to Udo, who I've mentioned a couple times already, Erasmus. And I really encourage listeners to check out my podcast with him or just simply Google him. I think he's a hero and I'm not joking when I say this, not enough people in the world know about him and his passion, what he has done to create a healthy blend of oils. And he has his Udo's Choice oil. He recommends several tablespoons a day of his oil, and then it differs between winter months and summer. Maybe here in Florida you need less of it. But to give you those good fats and the omega-3s that actually are important for our metabolism and help create heat in the body. So that's it. In any case, his oil is a blend of, I believe, flax, sunflower, sesame, evening primrose oil, but it's primarily got the flax for the right balance of the omega-3s and the omega-6, of course, and then some of the monounsaturated, that oleic acid.
I'll attach your podcast link, and I'll also attach does he have a link to his website?
I'm sure he does.
Yeah,
Udo's Choice,
and I'll put that in our show notes as well because I love that. Yeah. And another website that I came across was 0 Acres. It's a 0 Acres farm, and they actually have white papers on their website talking about seed oils and the difference between healthy fats, and you can order from them as well. They talk about olive oil, and that's actually I think actually Dave Asprey is a investor in that company. And then also I'm a big fan of like Paul Saladino, who's a physician, and they're also trying to make way and educate people about the difference of this. I mean, there's white papers is something what I mean by there's clinical studies. There's data and proof that using canola oil and all the other seed oils that like we mentioned have been what appears to be the driver of heart disease and chronic inflammation.
Well, it's inflammation. Inflammation is the underlying cause of everything,
exactly.
including heart disease.
Right. So other conditions, I mean, which involve like, heart disease, cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's, chronic lung disease. I mean, you name it.
Point out, back to that. It's really important that it is not the omega-6 fatty acids that are causing that inflammation. It's the way we're consuming those omega-6s in these ultra-processed seed oils, and that makes them an inflammatory oil.
And it's the ratio, like you said.
It is the ratio. So it's a couple, points to be made there. And so how do we change this? How do we eliminate? We have to eliminate those oils from the diet.
And you said,
reduce them. I mean, this is not going. Most of us can't go cold turkey. And I think the majority of consumers are just simply unaware of how much they're consuming of these seed oils daily. When they're doing their best, they're having their coffee in the morning with a plant-based milk that is a pretty significant source of some of these seed oils. It's a lot.
I'm really glad you mentioned that. Milk in general, like if you even go to, like if you pull up any of the milks that are on the shelf, I read every single label of anything I buy. So you got oat milk, almond milk. Any of the milks, there is so much crap in them. So I personally buy the brand Elmhurst. It's in a small white container. I don't even know the size, but it's the ingredient of the nut and water. I buy the 2 ingredient milk. It's cashew and water for cashew milk. It's almonds and water for almond milk.
Perfect.
It's like, and it's
you can press your own almonds and cashews and make
It's actually very easy. I have a few patients who do that, and they tell me to do it. And I'm like, I'll just buy it.
Right.
I'm like, thank you.
You can find I agree. Like sometimes we do need the ease of when you're busy. there's nothing wrong with buying prepared foods.
Right.
We just have to be so informed as consumers.
And I just want people to understand to read labels.
Yes.
And my rule of thumb is understand what's in what you're putting in your body, right? And so another trick so we talked about, okay, let's try to eat at home 50% of the time or more, right? Mm-hmm. I think if you're eating at home, you can make your own food, you can know what you're putting in, right? Unless you're getting a bunch of processed foods to make that easy crock pot dish, right? But I know there's easier ways. I grew up, how many crock pot dishes? Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. I love the crock pot. It's easy, but so many of the recipes I have found is buying canned goods and dumping them. And I'm like, oh my God, this drives me nuts. Why can't I find just an easy whole food crock pot dish, and I'm sure they're out there. It's just like, it's wasteless minutes that I spend. Right. But one of the biggest things that grosses me out now that I've, been eating clean for so long is actually the, cream of mushroom soup. Right. So cream of mushroom soup is in almost so many of the crock pot dishes that it just it grosses me out.
Oh no, we grew up that way.
Yeah,
so
much. I mean, I ate so much of that. Your
That's
chicken
how you
and
made
rice.
The sauce.
Yeah. So what's either an alternative, or can you give some tips for our patients and listeners on how they can eat healthy?
Something. If you want that creaminess, I personally use organic cream.
Right.
There's really no reason you're not using that whole fresh food in that case. And a lot of people don't do dairy. When you don't do dairy, there are other ways. And my brain's going into so many different directions right now because there are a lot of awesome resources out there to tap into. If you're looking to decrease bad fat and total fat, and there's a whole school of thought that we don't need to be cooking with oils anyway. Forks Over Knives is an awesome resource that comes to mind, that they do the zero fat cooking. I personally like some fat in my cooking because of flavor, and I don't heat my foods. When I pan fry, I'm not heating them to very high temperatures where you reach that smoke point and then that starts to oxidize the oil and degrade it, and that's really important. But so where was I going with the resources on the Forks Over Knives? Look into that and see how we can just simply decrease the amount of these fats that we're using the crock pot or Instapot. There are a lot of tips and tools, but just use oils in there, like a good healthy olive oil you can add. You can use some of these maybe healthy plant milks, but broth goes a long way when you're doing it, or some fresh organic butter. A lot of people are is butter back? It's not black and white, and it's not one or the other. Use these in small amounts. Any highly saturated fat, whether it is butter, lard, beef tallow, a lot is chosen based on flavor, the characteristics it's going to give you in cooking. And in the culinary world, it's a different conversation than just simply in the consumer world of choosing the healthiest ingredients and then making your own food at home. But back to that and cooking more at home, I think I don't even necessarily want to say 50%. Some people are doing most of their meals and they've gotten wind of this. They're already doing it. So we're not speaking to that population. We're speaking to those who think they're doing the right thing, but they may, fasting is very popular now. And so they're skipping breakfast at home and then they're going to work, and the first meal they eat is eaten out. And it's probably at a salad place because they're trying to do something good for themselves, and they want a lean protein on it, and then they choose a salad dressing. They don't know that chicken, I'm going to pick on chicken, even if it's a grilled chicken, is still a source of those seed oils. And the salad dressing to that. So the first meal they're eating is predominantly bad fat.
Right.
So prep it at home and grill your own chicken at home, and then you can bring olive oil with it or put avocado on it, put the seeds on it for these good fats. It ties it together. The good fats are really important. I digress. Obviously, I could, talk a long time. So, people need it to be easy. That's a big part of why it gets overwhelming for consumers. And I am a huge fan of the meal prepping on the weekends and going and buying the ingredients that you need, We all have our taste preferences. I think it's unrealistic to say stop eating fried foods or chips or snack products, but we can take baby steps to improve it. True. Right? And
I mean, I personally search now for if I get any tortilla chips, I get non-GMO, and they're made with avocado oil.
Nice.
Yeah.
I tend to do the same, as you can imagine, Deanna.
Yeah. So, I mean,
right?
you can just give yourself extra time at the grocery store to read your labels. And another tip is always shop on the outside, right? Outside aisles. If you're going up and down the aisles, you're going to be getting contaminated with all these seed oils. It's guaranteed, without a doubt.
But if you go and you buy, even on the perimeter of the grocery store, that's where you do eat meat. We're in a plant-based, plant-forward movement, which is excellent, but that means eating more fruits and vegetables. But if you do choose to eat meat, do buy the grass-fed, 100% grass-fed beef. Mm-hmm. There's some very lean,
Well, and Reed, talk about
cook it yourself.
I'm thinking of grass-fed. Sorry, I know this kind of isn't on topic, but I get grass-fed butter. I get and that's what I like. But if you even pick up what you think is butter at the grocery store, have you read a Betty Crocker? Oh, it's disgusting. That is not butter. No. Don't even get me started on the margarine. That's
seed oil.
And what does it have on the emblem though? It's got the American. It's heart healthy.
Oh yeah.
This is absolutely on it. Yeah. That's got the heart healthy stamp on it, which is. I was told back in college by my biochemistry professor that margarine is actually one molecule off from plastic. So I've never eaten it, touched it since then.
Unfortunately, there was a time where the heart associations were funded and sponsored by the food industry, and things shifted, and a lot of things that we were told in training were based on the skewed data.
It was skewed data.
Well, the skewed data is that they thought cholesterol was the devil.
And saturated fat.
And saturated fats. They thought animal fat was the devil, right?
And I'm going to bring up a trigger word for us. Crisco.
Yeah.
Please.
Let's talk about Crisco.
Let's talk about Crisco.
Let's talk about Crisco. Or should I say, we don't talk about Crisco.
Right.
Oh, my. So we were having a little just brief conversation that we grew up with it. My mom chose Crisco, and she made her homemade pie crust, and we would have these arguments because my grandmother apparently used lard, and then my mom said, no, Crisco makes the better crust. Horrible. Thankfully, it has been removed from the market, I believe, or maybe they're making Crisco differently, but it even became at some point it was made with the partially hydrogenated oils, which was the worst thing in the American diet, but it was all, the point being, post-World War II, this Crisco came in. It was cheap. It was easy. It was touted as being very healthful. And look at the trajectory of heart disease, cardiovascular disease, and diabetes in this country. And even now, where we're eating a more plant-based diet, how is it that obesity continues to rise? Back to that
exactly. Back to being
3 to 5 tablespoons or 30% of our calories coming from these seed oils.
Yep.
But Crisco, there's no place in the diet for it. And it's look at it's white, it's solid, it has zero flavor, but it creates that really flaky texture in foods. And the poor, mostly housewives in this 50s, 60s, 70s. Believed they were using something healthy for their families.
Exactly.
Because it's vegetable shortening, right? How can it be unhealthy?
So why in our generation is there so much inflammation, and we're seeing chronic diseases at younger and younger ages? I just read this morning that 18 to 25-year-olds are showing more signs of heart disease. Yeah. When did we ever think about cardiovascular disease, period, in an 18 to 25-year-old population?
Yeah.
So Crisco is just...
It's sad.
Yeah.
So
funny, though. It's not funny, but it's kind of funny. We joke about this in our...
No. Yeah. We know that seed oils in general, as we've already discussed, it's pro-oxidative, pro-inflammatory. They're toxic, and they're nutrient deficient.
So to your margarine, I wanted to bring this up too, and they can add back in some plant sterols. Well, what's a great source of plant sterols naturally, the phytosterols? Avocado oil, avocados, olives.
Eat avocados, eat olives, eat the whole foods, right?
So have some guacamole with your healthier chip. And I think that's important.
Now, I wanted to recap a little bit more on, I know you went through the complex more route of explaining how every category of fat actually has a little bit of the other one in it, right?
Yes.
But can you just give a general statement of like some examples of like what's an example of saturated fats?
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
And what's an example of like the unsaturated mono? Yeah.
We'll keep it easy. Anything that's solid at room temperature is highly saturated.
Okay.
So whether that is a Crisco, hate to even say that word again.
I hope that is off the shelf.
It is off the
Okay.
I believe. Actually, I think they.
I haven't seen it in a while.
I don't ever walk down the aisle, so I wouldn't know.
I don't either. So somebody can fill us in. Yeah. So anything solid at room temperature, like I said, butter, lard, beef tallow, ghee, coconut oil, any of those.
Okay.
And they're also good for your skin. So solid at room temperature is a highly saturated fat. That means it doesn't mean that there's no mono or polyunsaturated as part of it. It just means it's predominantly saturated. So we want to limit those, period, as far as what we consume. And I tell people, don't replace your olive oil with a coconut oil or a butter, right? So small amounts of it are okay and can fit into the diet. And then what is a highly unsaturated and volatile? When I say volatile, it's sensitive. I shouldn't say volatile. It's highly sensitive, something like the flaxseed oil that you'll only find it in a black container. Typically, it goes in the refrigerator and it will never solidify in the fridge. Something like olive oil, if you make your homemade dressing, you put it in the refrigerator, it's going to harden. Mm-hmm. So that shows that it does have some amount of saturated fats in it, and that's okay. That's a highly unsaturated fat at room temperature when it's liquid.
Okay.
Okay, and olive oil, peanut oil, those are the ones that are higher in the monounsaturated, and avocado oil as well. See, those are the three biggies that are very high in the monounsaturated, that oleic acid that I mentioned. And then there's that whole group of more of those vegetable oils like the soybean and the corn and the canola, and I'll even mention rapeseed that we use in Europe. They use different. So, sorry, my brain went off to Germany there for a brief moment. But those are higher in the omega-3 fatty acid that we need, that ALA. Of those, the canola oil is actually the highest in the omega-3 versus omega-6, and then comes your soybean. Interesting. Highest in the omega-6 is corn and safflower and sunflower. Oh, and grapeseed. I never use grapeseed oil. People ask me that, and I'm like, I don't think we should be consuming grapeseed oil, period.
No, I know that can be mixed in some of the compounded medications and in a lot of skincare products.
Yes.
So that's where, but people don't realize, like, you're still absorbing this. Your skin is highly absorbable, and even though you're not ingesting it per se, you can still be
you are absolutely
getting it and
make it a pure form.
Because these are still considered like obesogenics, and these are still like possibly cancer causing, and yet they're in our skincare.
Great
and that's the part that I find very interesting, that you have to do your research.
So from a medical standpoint, I love hearing you say that.
Yeah.
People are looking for doctors all the time, and I hope they're listening. You look at this, you mention this to your patients, and I think that's phenomenal. We tend to forget what we put on our skins as much as like what we put in our bodies affects it as well.
And one other thing I'd like, I hear the term PUFA a lot. Can you explain what a PUFA? That's a PUFA. Yeah, PUFAs and MUFAs.
Yeah, so those are your omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids, quite simply. So polyunsaturated fatty acids. Again, omega-3s and omega-6s, we do need both. It's just we need them in a ratio that we're not consuming, unfortunately. We do need more, or we'll get more of the omega-6 to omega-3, but that's just been thrown so far out of proportion. But of the omega-6, then you'll have the ones like linoleic acid, and this is where it gets a little confusing, versus alpha-linolenic, and that is the omega-3 that gets converted to EPA to DHA.
Right. So that's right. Linoleic acid is actually known as more of the, with more omega-6s, and this is more contributed to the seed oils that we're talking about.
Correct.
And
they are pro-inflammatory in the body. It helps, but we need that a normal, natural inflammatory response. You know that quite well, right?
I'd rather you get your omega-6s from eating the nuts and seeds, right? Than ingesting the processed form, like we've already discussed, right?
Exactly.
So once again, whole food diet, right? But be careful. I will say, if you ever look and you're going to get a mixed nuts, bag of mixed blend, what are they roasted in?
Yes.
Yeah.
Canola oil.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Almost
you're better off
hard.
buying the raw form.
Right.
And then you can do whatever you want with them, like to make them taste better at your house, maybe. But like,
I have to tell you, I just was looking for organic dried cherries. I was shocked to find, normally I would just pick it up off the shelf and make an assumption. Yes, I admit it, as a dietitian, sometimes even I make assumptions about what is in my food when it says dried organic cherries.
right.
They had oil. I'm like,
It's like, why? Just dry the freaking cherry.
Yes.
Like, I just don't understand this.
Yes.
They
And
have
that's
to-
what I
So
just
be
want
careful.
everybody to understand. Like, things that you can assume would be healthy is not.
Not
Like,
necessarily. You have to be a very savvy consumer and more educated.
Absolutely.
We're doing it until we change it. Back to my hero, Udo,
Yep.
who really knows how to make a healthy oil, put it that way. But it's not feasible for mass production, and that's the problem. And it's too expensive.
Yeah.
Our food industry, we're not going down that path of.
Hopefully, there's changes coming soon.
There are,
So,
in small ways, and we can, on an individual level,
Right.
of course, we control what we purchase and what we put in our bodies. And it's just as with your produce. Do buy local organic. I think you both know that I love my local farm box. Give a shout out to them all the time. I live in New Jersey. We have incredible fresh produce, and I get my farm box year round. So they pull from other, at least it's in the region, if not necessarily from their farm, of course. But I think it's really important to apply those same practices to, holistically to our diet, meaning look at if you choose to eat meat and animal products, find local sources.
yeah. I mean, that's a whole nother topic that we might have at some point,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. We have plenty
I
of
say-
topics we can have.
Yes.
But
Oil producers, though, there are a lot of them.
the first step is definitely education and knowledge, and know
100%.
what's bad and know what to look out for, and then you can fine tune the details later on.
Yes.
But you're
Yeah.
absolutely right about seed oils.
So wrapping this up, Susan, I would say a couple of the tips I would recommend is read your labels, educate yourself what you're putting into your body. 2, I would do most of your shopping around the outside of the grocery store and try to limit the amount you go up and down the aisles, because that is where the super ultra processed food is. Is there any other tips that you can recommend?
And then eat more of your own homemade prepared foods and make your own salad dressing.
Yes.
My other tip is, and this is just a very broad generalization, don't skip that first meal at home. I think the first thing you put into your body in the day, whether you pack it and take it with you to the office, but don't skip your first meal of the day, including good fats. And, I say good fats, fiber, and protein. I am personally a big fan of the overnight oats, and I love when I hear this all the time. Oats are so bad and shouldn't be for human consumption. We can debate that another time.
That is a debate.
It is a debate.
I'm like,
But
ooh,
if you
that's something we could
I
definitely
know,
talk about.
I love that. So I'll take my organic, my healthy oats, but that it's not just oats that I'm consuming. It is my vehicle for flaxseed, hemp seed, chia seed, pumpkin seed. I make essentially my seed blend.
Right. I mean, there's so many recipes that you can also make your own little snack bars, right? With all those flaxseed, chia seeds.
Gifted
Exactly.
you today.
Yes, which I cannot wait
Secret
to try.
ingredients in there. And I'll say just really quickly, I mentioned fiber, good fat. That's my tagline. I've been saying it for many years. We need good fats, fiber, and phytonutrients, something like an avocado or the oats with the seeds in it. So we do need the fiber as well, and that's why I say that too, Deanna.
By eating it whole. Exactly. Yeah. Just like if you were to eat a whole apple rather than drinking apple juice, right? I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And, some other tips I will also post in the show notes is, I personally use a food prep company. Like I don't prep myself. I wish I did more of it, and sometimes I do, but I use a company, Trifecta. They do not use any seed oils.
Fabulous.
And they talk about like there's no plastics in their containers either, and all great stuff. And then if you are curious and you are going to be eating out at a restaurant, there is an app that you can download called Seed Scout.
Yes.
And I'm a huge advocate of them. I'm waiting for more restaurants to be on the app in our area. But I'm a big fan of eating at True Food. They only cook with olive oil or avocado oil, and it's delicious.
It is delicious. I completely agree. Thank you for mentioning that. That's very, very helpful. We all love to eat out. It's true.
Yeah.
So that app, I downloaded it because I know you have it, and I was curious. So I found out from Deanna about the Seed Oil Scout. And it's a great app.
It makes you feel better when you are eating out, that you can look up and say, okay, I know I can trust this restaurant, and people give feedback.
Sorry, Dan. Yeah. If you are eating at a restaurant, you don't have, and you do like it, and it has the red, there are no good options, just don't eat fried foods there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because that's only making it worse.
Worse, exactly. Thank you, Susan, so much for coming on this very
Another
educational
great
podcast.
episode.
Exactly. I
So
can't
fun.
wait to have you back.
Thank you.
And can you go ahead and tell our audience how they might be able to find you?
Okay, well, I would love to steer them towards the Sense of Wellness podcast. So A Sense of Wellness podcast, that's mine, and where you can find that episode with Udo, as we mentioned, for further information. And I am the Senior Vice President at Castle Connolly Private Health Partners. We are a concierge medicine organization. That is ccphp.net. That's kind of a mouthful. And Susan Greeley, I'm on all social media. Seen out there as Food Med RDN, because I do believe food is medicine. And such a pleasure to be here. I love this.
Great.
Thank
and
you.
I'll post everything in the show notes.
Excellent.
Thank you.
The information contained in this podcast is provided for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended for the purposes of diagnosing, curing, treating, or preventing any disease. This podcast is provided on the understanding that it does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services. Before using any products or services referenced on this podcast, consult with your healthcare provider, carefully read all labels, and heed all directions and cautions that accompany the products. Information found or received through the podcast should not be used in place of a consultation or advice from a healthcare provider. If you suspect you have a medical problem or should you have any healthcare questions, please promptly call or see your healthcare provider. This podcast, including Dr. Brian Marias, Deanna Weilbacher, and Hybrid Medical Solution, do not claim responsibility for any adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for any statements made by the guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements and advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referenced.
If you would like to submit any questions, or if you have any topics you would be interested in hearing about on future episodes, please contact us through our website, www.hybridmedicalsolution.com. That is solution with no S at the end. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, all under Hybrid Medical Solution.